Today, I want to share with you 5 things I've learned from fly fishing in saltwater. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into Spooled, the podcast from the Northern Angler Fly Shop. I'm your host today, Matt Hartman, and it feels good to be back. First of all, I need to tell you something. I have to admit it up front. I am not an experienced saltwater angler. I wish I was. Believe me, I'm excited to gain more experience. I've been very lucky to spend 2 weeks within the past 12 months down in Cuba. We've been doing some amazing trips. We've been chasing bonefish, tarpon, permit, basically anything that swims. Barracuda, grouper. I think Brian even caught a shark at one point. It's an incredible place. I'm not telling you this to brag. That's really important. I just want you to understand what my experience is. It's 2 weeks, but I am trying to absorb every little thing as a standard freshwater angler learning the saltwater environment. And I've been very lucky to fish with some great teachers, some great people that are willing to share their experience that they've gained over years and years of doing this stuff. So, hopefully this can help you if you're maybe planning your first trip or thinking about it, or maybe, you've gone a few times and maybe there'll be a little nugget for you, something you didn't think about. So this is kind of where I'm coming from, and I'm excited to talk saltwater. I'm excited even more to go back again. So little shameless plug here that the Northern Angler, Brian and myself, are doing hosted trips down to Cuba every year at this point. So if you want to learn more about that, hit us up, email us, or check it out on thenorthernangler.com. All right, here we go. 5 things I've learned about saltwater fishing. First of all, accuracy is everything. It's definitely more important than distance. I think sometimes we cheat ourselves with being so focused on casting as far as we can. I think most guides would rather you be able to put your fly inside of a coffee mug than inside of a hula hoop at whatever distance you can. So if you're going to focus on something, if you're prepping for one of these trips, if you're thinking about this in the future, really be picky about your accuracy. We had some tough conditions. My bunkmate and my boatmate and I, this was our second time. Actually, Tim had gone. This was his third time, but hopefully we'll get him on the podcast here soon too. But in January, I was able to make close enough casts and still be able to get bonefish to come and chase. And we were seeing just recently in November here, much more difficult casting setups, really, where these fish were in incredibly shallow water. Our guide couldn't even pull in close enough. So we were making long casts, and they needed to be basically within 6 inches of the fish. And that was very difficult for me. I goofed up a lot of casts, and Leo, our guide, would say, "Matt, why you cast behind? I told you yesterday, put right on their head." And I had to explain to him that I wasn't purposely trying to mess his day up, or my casts for that matter. So that's something that I really took away from this past week, was accuracy is incredibly important. And maybe I think some of us should not focus on casting our maximum distance, but casting within a comfortable range, under pressure, of course, but accurately. I think had I been able to hit some spots, even just, we're talking, reasonable distances here. Had I been a little bit more accurate, I would have come away with a lot more fish to hand. The second thing I learned is how important it is to build a relationship with your guide. This is, I don't know if there's a more important tip in here, honestly, than to spend some time with your guide. I think that was something that my boatmate and I did that really it kind of it got us on the level a lot sooner in the trip. I mean, most of these trips you're fishing 5 to 6 days, and you know, by the third day you'll start to click. But it's because they want you to be successful right away. They want you to be catching fish. They want to go back to the boat and say, hey, my guy caught this many. But the relationship is so important to success. So, you know, pretty much even before we would stand on the bow, we wanted to get to know our guy, and we wanted to talk about communication style. We both said, hey, we want to hear from you. If we make a bad cast, we want to hear about it. My guide I had on a previous trip, I'd make a bad cast and I'd be, you know, stripping and looking and, you know, trying to be ready, and I wouldn't hear anything. And I'd look back and I'd say, you know, hey, what happened? And he said, well, it was a bad cast. And I'm like, just tell me. That's okay. I can take it. I, you know, try to have fairly thick skin. So build that relationship. Tell your guide what you want to hear from them, what's helpful. Definitely, I think even more important than that is show your guide your cast. You know, basically help him understand what you're capable of, and help yourself understand what the expectations are. For us in Cuba, everything's in meters, right? So I talked in a previous video, if you got a chance to watch the Improve Your Casting video, about practicing specifically at meters. Yeah, it's a easy conversion from yards or feet to meters, but when you're short on time and there's a fish that's swimming from left to right, you know, and you can't see it, and the boat's turning, all these things are happening, the wind is blowing. If you can know what your guide's expectation is for 20 meters and hit it, man, he's going to be just happy and fine when the fish decides not to eat. You got to get it there first though, right? So, you know, we went through and said, Leo was our guide's name. We said, okay, how far is this? This is my 10 meters. This is my 12. This is my 15, 20, 25, so on. And something that happened that I thought was so cool is he saw, you know, kind of where our limit was and where our casts started to fall apart, because, you know, it happens. Let's be honest. Under pressure, in the wind, there's a fish tailing, things sometimes fall apart. You get too excited. And he figured out where our longest cast was. And instead of, you know, giving us the meters for when he wanted that cast, he would say, Matt, cast long. And I knew he wanted me to air it out, the longest cast we could manage. And that helped him understand how close he needed to get the boat, how, you know, what situations were best for our casting style. And building that relationship is so helpful when things are tense. You know, we had some days where fishing just shut down at certain parts of the day. I think, you know, that's just how fishing is anywhere. But being able to fall back on camaraderie, a good relationship, asking him about his family, all these things, then just focusing on slow fishing made the days go well. And it panned out and played so much better for the next day, because we never ended a day, even when it was slow, we never ended a day on a bad note. We always just said, you know, fishing slow, let's have a laugh. We're going to have a beer on the way back. You know, let's do something goofy. You know, if bonefish are not rocking right now, or whatever's not rocking now, let's go goof off. Let's go catch some snapper on a light rod or something and just end the day on a high note. And that was so helpful throughout the week to build that relationship early, because it's what you can fall back on when things are not going like you want. The only other thing I would say is figure out your directions. You know, Leo would give us a very hard time about, you know, he wants it there. It's 10 meters, 3:00 now. And, you know, we're looking up this way and he's looking this way, and he's say, you know, how much wine did you have last night? How many beers? and they're not going to have numbers painted on the bow for you, right? So what I always would do is I would point my rod. As I could start to sense when he was going to tell me something, if he was tracking a fish, he'd start to turn the boat before he'd say anything. And at that point, I'd start to pick up the rod. And he could see right away if I knew where the fish was. And then he'd try and tell me. And if I couldn't see it, he'd say, 2:00. And I'd point and he'd say, nope, further right or further left before I'd start the cast. Because once you start the casting motion, sometimes it's very difficult to make that adjustment. So, there's so many tools, and just communicate to your guide that you want to learn. You want the feedback. You're there to learn, and you'll have a fun time with it for sure. Number 3 is all about weight in your flies. And I think I'd rather have just a few patterns with a range of weight options than a huge box full of different patterns. This is one thing I love about saltwater fishing. You do not need to take the kitchen sink with you. You can pick a few confidence patterns and just switch up the weights, whether it's lead eyes, bead chain, plastic bead chain, or nothing at all, and be fairly well prepared for most situations. You're going to need some shrimp patterns for bonefish. You're going to need some crab patterns for your permit. You're going to need a few different streamers and things for tarpon. And, just varying the weights and the sizes a little bit, and you'll be in business. And that was, I learned that my first trip down, and I had this packed to the gills bonefish box, right? Gotchas and spawning shrimp and mantis and bonefish bitters, and you name it. Like, I wanted a little bit of everything. And unfortunately, we found the fly that our guide liked. All the guides actually was the mantis shrimp. Love the mantis. And I didn't have a ton of them. I had probably 4 per size, and it was not enough. Things happen. You get nicks in the line, it breaks off, things happen. You go through flies. That's part of the deal. This time I knew exactly what I wanted, and I brought down like 8 or 10 of each size, different weights, lighter weights with the mantis. And that's all we fished pretty much for the week. We goofed with a few other ones, but having just different sizes, maybe a few different shades, but the weight is essential, especially if you're going from, we spent a lot of time in the boat, but once in a while we'd hop out and wade. You want a light fly. If you're only fishing a foot deep, those fish are going to feel lead eyes coming down on them. You got to be able to land it light. It's enough of a problem if you're landing the fly line on top of the fish, but if you're making the right cast where the fly's just landing in front and that spooks them, your fly's way too heavy. So lighten it up. So that's just a quick one as it goes with flies. I love the saltwater fly game. We might be doing some tutorials coming up with the flies we've had some success with, just because it's fun. I think they're simple, they're elegant, they're good looking bugs. Fun to tie those up. All right. Tip number 4 is measure your success in opportunities. This is huge for me. As a new saltwater angler, the amount of shots you get should be how you measure your success. I'll never forget the very first day. I was so excited. I caught my first bonefish. It was slow. It was windy. It was rough. I was really struggling on the bow with my directions, and not the directions, but the distances and stuff. But I was on cloud 9. I caught like 3 bonefish my first day, and I came back and sat with all these guys that had been saltwater fishing for a long time, and they're great. And that it was not a brag thing. It was just talking about their day. And I could hear people like, oh, I got 12 today or something, or, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong? And it just instantly turned into this, what am I doing wrong thing? And I went back to my room and I had a refocus session, and I took a little journal down, and I wrote this. A really good idea too, by the way, is take little notes at the end of your day, because we'll talk about that in a second, but it's to focus on your opportunities. How many shots you get is more important as a new angler than how many successes you get, because you're going to learn the most amount of things from the shots that don't actually, turn into a fish that's landed. You're going to learn the most from those opportunities that don't come together, because, oh, well, I cast too far, I cast too short, or, I didn't set the hook right. All those things are going to make you a better angler. So that's a really, really, really important one for me to communicate, is that the opportunities you get are more important sometimes than the fish you land. All right, the fish are pretty cool too, but if you're having a tough day, which always happens, every trip is like this. We do these 6-day trips, right? And what I always find is 2 days are going to be rough. I mean, you're going to come back to the boat and need a beer, and you're not going to want fishing's going to be slow. It's just how it goes. 2 days are going to be, so, maybe they're half and half days. We had a few of these where we rocked them in the morning and then just nothing in the afternoon. It was trippy. And it wasn't just us. It was the whole group had that. And then you have one, and maybe if you're lucky, 2 days where you're a rock star. I mean, you just clean up, you can't miss. And we had one of those days, and it was amazing. It just, I think I tried to lay down in the bow and take a nap at one point. We were just rocking it. But being able to go back to that little journal you have and write down your successes, write down your lessons that you've learned, take away. That's what gets you through those hard days, is remembering how awesome it is when everything comes together, but also setting your expectations right. You cannot expect every day to be on cloud 9, just batting 1,000. That doesn't happen. So that's something that's really important. And I try and tell all our groups this, is just set your expectations right. Don't let yourself get disappointed. You're in an amazing setting. Some places you're going that people will not get an opportunity to enjoy. So, hold on to those successes, but don't shy away from learning from all those opportunities you have. That's what's making me a better saltwater angler in just these 2 trips, is reviewing. Okay, when he said this, I should have done that. When I did this, I should have done this. And that's how we learn things. So that's okay. And if you surround yourself with the right people, this is what I love about our groups. I'd step off the boat, after a tough day. I'd say, you know what? I had a rough day. I made a lot of mistakes. I'll own them. How'd you do today? And maybe the coin flips one day and they come back and they're rough. And you're like, but come on, tell me, I'll ask you, and as will anyone in these groups, what was your positive today? And they will celebrate the one bonefish you caught, even though they caught 20, whatever. That's what's fun about the camaraderie with these groups, is they know everyone has down days and everyone's going to have epic days. So it's so much fun. I love it. I love the up, down, the journey that you go on. It's an awesome thing. I hope everybody gets the opportunity to do that. Last one I want to cover is how to deal with the downtime in the boat. It's part of the reason I haven't quite fallen in love with permit fishing. There's a lot of bow time, and you're just kind of trying to stay focused. But what I've found is it's really helpful to have a mantra. This is a mantra, if you don't know, of course, is something you can repeat in your head that just helps you stay focused. I'm not going to tell you mine, but there's some amazing ones out there, thanks to sports psychology, of course. So, it's something that helps me keep my head in the game, because there's nothing worse when you're on the bow for 45 minutes. Your guide is working his butt off, right? He's pulling you into the wind. he's believing that you're going to be ready, and he calls the shot, and you're in la la land. You're looking at the clouds. So have something that keeps you focused, and another thing too, my boatmate and I, we like to talk. We like to, laugh and joke. And, it's probably good to ask your guide if he's okay with that, or if that's going to spook the fish or whatnot. And maybe he just wants some peace and quiet. That's fine too. But have something, back up. Have something, mentally ready to help you through the quiet times or the tough times. Just seize the moment, seize the carp, whatever your thing is. So have a mantra is something that helped me a few times stay in the game and be ready, because man, I remember the first trip, we'd go permit fishing all afternoon and just stare. And it was very difficult for me to stay focused. So that was something I took away was, to be mentally prepared for some slow time and ready to rock it when it happens. So, bonus. All right. I've got one last one. Bonus tip. We'll call it number 6. Why not? Talk to people who've been there. And I don't mean talk to the company or just us. Say if you're going with us, see if they'll put you in touch with someone who has a similar skill set or experience level, and talk to them about expectations, talk to them about anything you're curious about, so that you get as full of a picture as possible. We did this with, these companies do an amazing job putting these things together, but it's tough. Fishing develops very quickly, and we've seen this in big ways in recommended fly lists, for example. It's tough when a new fly comes on, is hot. Man, think about all the paperwork they have to update to get everyone on that same page. So, maybe you talk to someone and they just say, hey, it wouldn't hurt to pack something like this. I had that happen on this last trip. I talked to someone who had been there, and they said, throw that in your bag just for a slow day, see what happens. That made our day, our big day where we were heroes, if you will. Having this one, different fly line with us totally changed the game. So talk to someone who's been there. You can get a real perspective on what to expect. And when you have the right expectations, you're not disappointed. You set yourself up for success. So, all right, we just rocked out, actually, not just 5, but 6 tips for saltwater fishing that I've learned as a new angler, just being able to go somehow twice in the past 12 months. I hope all of you have the opportunity to experience flat fishing sometime. Don't wait. I don't know why I waited so long. It's an absolute riot. There's no other way to describe it, honestly. It's awesome to unplug and go on a multi-day trip where you can build on that experience. It's great. You build a camaraderie, you build that relationship with your guide. Hopefully your presentations improve and your conversion rate's better. You're not just counting the opportunities at the end of the trip. You're counting, hey, beginning of the week, I didn't make that happen. End of the week, I did. So you're walking away with new skills and, this new confidence. It's exciting. It's fun to see everyone go through that. And it's exciting for myself as well. If you have any tips you'd like to share with our other listeners, you can hit us up at Instagram or, of course, our email. If you're watching this on YouTube, maybe leave us a comment down in the section below after you hit the like button and subscribe, of course. I hope you all have fun out there. Hopefully you're getting out in the water, and we will see you very soon in the shop or out on the water.